I'll try to make this concise. My name is Charity Krause. It is July 21st, 2021 at 7:49 p.m. I am letting you know right now I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I'm going to give a very quick report. I guess you could say this would be something that would be part of a testimonial evidence were it to be requested. I've just found something I've been looking for a substantial amount of time that I had not been able to find for a while. It's presumably on page 40 and 41 of a magazine entitled War Cry, which is a publication of the Salvation Army, dated for May of 2018. To be honest with you, it is not as I recall it appearing originally. I recall the actual picture itself, the graphic, being in a different location. In the context of the other pages in the publication, there were other reference points, including more specific information on specific locations throughout the world where the Salvation Army had operations at that time. And there is a graphic on the cover that I do not recall that has a reference to a motto invoking a blood and fire. But currently, what I just found in a PDF on the actual Salvation Army website in the archives is a picture of what appear to be a pair of tweezers holding a microchip. And that within that microchip there is some sort of shading, as if it is revealing various parts, almost as if it could potentially even be heated. Now I remember the graphic, but the placement of the graphic is juxtaposed a article that presumes to be discussing scripture from the book of Isaiah from the Bible, and I don't recall that at the time either, at least not in the specific publication I saw. The specific publication I was looking at was talking about the Salvation Army's work, its practical work in Africa and in other parts of the world. And this was in a context of talking about understanding that there were a variety of maladies that were ongoing in the world. It was not invoking scripture at the time that I recall. Now, it is possible that that image and the story of Isaiah was the actual placement in the publication I saw. It was an actual publication that was in a news box in the lobby of the actual Salvation Army in Austin in May of 2018, April and May of 2018. I did have a copy of that with me. It was in the items that I had with me when I came to Dallas by the end of May of 2018. I no longer have that, and I have not been able to find that specific presentation for a while. I've already gone on the record talking about my concern regarding what I identified as the Isaiah scam that I understood as part of a specific pattern of racketeering activity that involves exploitation of women, including in connection with local pension schemes that I first experienced directly during the Super Bowl in 2017 while I was in Houston, Texas, and that forced me to leave the actual city in order to seek assistance, only to be kidnapped and returned to the city, and then have to deal with matters since then. I'm concerned because I found that publication at a time when I was actually in a Salvation Army in Austin, and I had been told I was required to obtain a tuberculosis test in order to stay. At that time, under the code of law in Texas, under the Texas government code concerning immunizations, there is a requirement on providers of immunizations specifically, but also for other kinds of medical care, to provide beforehand an inventory of items up to and including the identification of the manufacturer, as well as information regarding the cost and information regarding to whom the billing for that cost would be sent in connection with items such as those. I had written a memo and turned it into members of the staff of the Salvation Army, specifically identified as the executive director at that specific location. And later that day, I was told I was being removed from the building and being evicted because I had not obtained my tuberculosis test. I contended it was retaliation for the fact that just that day I had been reviewing evidence of substantial crime, including in connection with deaths of people that I allege was actually acts of murder. And that when it had been discovered that I had that evidence with me, and that I had that evidence with me on site because I had been denied an appropriate evidence submissions process, that I was subjected to retaliation. And the excuse was that I had not obtained a tuberculosis test. The truth of the matter is, by law, they were required to provide me with the information that I requested in that memo before they were in any position to demand that I receive a tuberculosis test. There was a center immediately adjacent to that Salvation Army that provided day services for people who were homeless. It was also, at least at that time, a place where people who were on the street homeless could sleep outside at night. So while you would have people in the shelter at the Salvation Army in Austin, you would also have people on the street, sleeping on the street, immediately around and also across the street from the Salvation Army on the other side, outside of that day provider for the homeless. And that day provider was a clinic where presumably one could obtain a tuberculosis test. I asked them if I could schedule a time to take a tuberculosis test, and asked them if I could see information on the specific kind of test they were going to use. Somebody provided me with what was a folded up sheets of paper. It's the actual product information that would be inserted into the batches of immunizations or vaccinations, or in this case, tuberculosis tests that would be distributed. Mind you, I used to work at a public sexual health clinic in San Francisco that administered tuberculosis tests, so I know about the, if nothing else, the facilities and the storage of such tests, and how one has to have a licensed phlebotomist in order to administer tuberculosis tests, at least in the state of California, and I believe nationally within the United States. So when they provided me with the actual product information, I reviewed it, and I was concerned because, for one thing, the pharmacy that they referenced had some information that, once I actually did a cross-check on cross-reference of that specific pharmacy online, found was, at least online, identifying that it had a different product line than the one that would have included the specific information they gave me. Additionally, there was information regarding the ingredients or the component parts of that specific tuberculosis test that I thought were suspicious, specifically because it did not correlate with the percentages and the specific manner in which it was detailed in the electronic version. It was for that reason primarily that I requested a specific invocation of that Texas code regarding immunizations and information regarding financing for immunizations, formally in a memo that I gave to them that day, along with another memo that I gave to them that same day, recording how I had attempted to file a report with the police about being harassed by a security guard right outside of the Salvation Army while I was outside prior to the end of the evening situation. So I say this because I am going to put this on the record and let you know. I found the actual graphic. My contention is that these are not unrelated matters, and I will be following up on them.